Layoffs are a huge issue in the USA right now. In 2024, at the rate of layoffs happening in major corporations and really most corporations, it seems like, all around the country, it's not just a small problem. I mean, it's a straight up catastrophe. When you lose your livelihood and are unable to get it back because all the other companies that you'd apply to are also doing layoffs as well, I mean, what are you really supposed to do to make ends meet anymore? Inc.com reports that 130,000 tech workers have lost their jobs due to layoffs so far in 2024. And that's on top of the 263,000 people who have lost their job in tech in 2023. And then when you expand that to all industries in which people were laid off, we reported last month that over 170,000 people lost their jobs in August. And I don't have the full total number for you, so I'll just go over every major layoff that I could find. And I don't have the total numbers. Maybe if you're bored at home, you can add that up before an official number comes out. But I just want to go over the types and industries because this is really a nationwide crisis. This is really something that's affecting people in every single industry. And it's something that I don't know if it's getting better, but it's not getting drastically better. And we're not seeing any major company go on a hiring spree. We're just seeing more layoffs after more layoffs. So let's dive in. Our first article is from Intelligence, and as always, I list all the articles I reference down in the description below, so you can read them for yourself. I'm just gonna go over the highlights and how it pertains to what we're talking about today. So Intelligence, the headline of this is companies that announced major layoffs and hiring freezes. And it says Intelligence, and this is from September 26, 2024. Intelligence offers the latest layoffs, downsizing, job cuts, and hiring freeze data for market intelligence, customer intelligence, sales intelligence, and risk intelligence activities. We monitor public sources like news and warrant filings. And their numbers say that since January 1st, 2023, 5,487 companies have announced mass layoffs. And since January 1st, 2024, 4,453 companies have announced mass layoffs. And that's of September 26, 2024. And then the first company that they go into more detail on is GM, General Motors, which we covered here on the channel. And they say the number of employees to be laid off are 1,695. Industry is automobile, and this is in September 2024. So as per the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification, or WARN notice filed, General Motors will begin laying off 1,695 workers at its Fairfax assembly plant in Kansas. Earlier in May, GM had stated that it would pause production on the Cadillac XT4 after January 2025 in Kansas, resulting in layoffs of production employees until production resumes in late 2025 for both the Bolt EV and XT4. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the opening, but I'm just going to be talking about what's going on in September. I mean, we don't even have to go too far back to see all these people being laid off, unfortunately. And the next is Pitney Bowes. The number of employees to be laid off, 1,200. And this is September, obviously. So Pitney Bowes' former e-commerce logistics unit will lay off over 1,200 employees and close 6 facilities as it winds down its operations. Most job cuts will occur in early October when 5 warehouses close. The 6th facility, a distribution center in Monroe, New Jersey, will close November 7th, resulting in 413 layoffs. And then there's a company based out of South Africa, a coal miner, and we go on to GE Vernova. The number of employees to be laid off, 900, and the industry they're in is energy and utilities. And GE Vernova, the largest wind turbine manufacturer in the United States, could cut up to 900 jobs globally as it looks to restructure its offshore wind business. Inflation, global supply chain challenges, and other industry-wide issues have contributed to the company's decision to downsize its offshore wind unit. So it's saying it's out of the US, but it's also saying offshore. So it doesn't list exactly the locations on this one. And then there's Verizon, which I also covered here. And the number of employees to be laid off, 4,800. and the industry is telecommunications. And it says Verizon Communications expects charges of up to $1.9 billion in the third quarter related to employee buyouts. About 4,800 employees will leave the telecommunications giant by March under Verizon's voluntary separation program announced in June. Half of those employees will go in September. And we talked about how it's never good to lose your job, but it sounds like they're putting a good amount of money away for severance packages. So hopefully people have enough money in severance to pay their bills and stay afloat until they can land a new job. Then we have a company based out of Japan. And then we have PricewaterhouseCoopers US, number of employees to be laid off, 1,800. And this is a company that we went over in a previous video as well. It says PricewaterhouseCoopers US unit is laying off about 1,800 workers. Its first formal layoff since 2009 and restructuring its products and technology group to simplify operations and address declining demand for specific advisory services. The company plans to notify those affected, roughly 2.5% of the workforce at the US unit in October. And people in the comments told me it was like half a percentage globally. Well, it's telling you in this article that 2.5% of the workforce is affected, which, I mean, I don't think you should just be so desensitized to 1,800 people losing their job over the period of a couple of months. I mean, should have some kind of empathy for people who, for all intents and purposes, are doing their job and they're doing it well and they're still losing it. So. The next one is LL Flooring, and number of employees to be laid off 2,000, and the industry is retail. And it says LL Flooring closed nearly 100 of its 442 stores earlier this year and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. As a result of the closures, around 2,000 employees will lose their jobs. The company said that placed flooring installation orders will be completed over the next 30 days, but no new installation orders will be accepted. Then we got a company out of Sweden, we got a company out of Spain, and then we have Edwards Life Sciences, and number of employees to be laid off 540, and the industry is biotechnology. And it says Edwards Life Sciences will lay off 3% of its global workforce, about 540 employees, to realign resources and capabilities. The restructuring comes the same week Edwards completed the $4.2 billion sale of its critical care business to BD. The next article is from Fast Company, and the headline is Disney and Paramount lay off hundreds of employees as legacy media giants struggle with pay TV decline in 2024. And this article is from September 26th of this year. And the article says that it hasn't been a good week for the entertainment industry. Two of media's biggest names, the Walt Disney Company and Paramount Global, each announced layoffs this week. Both said they could cut hundreds of positions in efforts to reduce cost. Here's what you need to know. Paramount Global trims U.S. workforce. On Tuesday, Paramount Global announced it would begin phase 2 of its workforce reductions in the United States, which the company announced it began earlier this year. There wasn't a firm number offered as to how many employees would be let go, but Deadline reported it would at least be several hundred. The company's co-CEOs announced the commencement of phase 2 of the layoffs in a memo to employees that was obtained by Fast Company. Like the entire media industry, we are working to accelerate streaming profitability while at the same time adjusting to the evolving landscape in our traditional businesses. In order to set Paramount up for continued success, we are taking these actions, and after today, 90% of these reductions will be complete, the executives wrote. It is believed that phase 2 layoffs will impact Paramount's streaming organization more than other departments, Deadline reports. It also notes that last week's Paramount's advertising division also went through job cuts. Previously, Paramount has said all phases of the current layoffs will see about 15% of its U.S. workforce will go for a total of around 2,000 cuts. Paramount CEO said its layoffs were 90% complete after this week's cuts. They encompass a plan to help the company save $500 million annually. And then the next article is from Reuters, doing more of a deep dive into Paramount. And it says, and the headline is, Paramount Global begins second phase of layoffs in U.S., internal memo says. And it says that the cuts are a part of the company's efforts to reduce annual costs by $500 million as it looks to streamline its operations ahead of its merger with Skydance Media. Paramount began cutting jobs in August and plans to lay off 15% of its U.S.-based workforce in 3 phases by the end of the year. About 90% of the layoffs will be complete after Tuesday, the memo said. The firm also wrote down the value of its cable networks by $6 billion last month as it grapples with a decline in its traditional cable television business, driven in part by advertisers increasingly shifting their spending to streaming platforms. The job cuts are expected to lead to charges of $300 million to $400 million in the third quarter, company executives had said in August. And then back to the Fast Company article. Disney lays off around 300 corporate workers. A day after Paramount's most recent job cuts, Disney announced it would also cut its workforce. Deadline pegs the number of Disney staff let go this week to be around 300. All those laid off are based in the United States, with the layoffs impacting legal, finance, HR, and communications. In a statement confirming the layoffs, a Disney spokesperson said, "We continually evaluate ways to invest in our businesses and more effectively manage our resources and costs to fuel the state-of-the-art creativity and innovation that consumers value and expect from Disney. As part of this ongoing optimization work, we have been reviewing the cost structure for our corporate level functions and have determined there are ways for them to operate more efficiently." The latest layoffs come just days after Disney's 2024 fiscal year concludes on September 30th. However, while devastating for those affected, the week's layoffs of 300 pale in comparison to the seismic impact that CEO Bob Iger had on the company's workforce numbers when he returned in 2023 to the helm of the company again. At the time, Iger culled 7,000 positions in an effort to help save $5.5 billion. But the 300 laid off this week aren't the only Disney employees who have lost their jobs recently. In May, Pixar cut about 14% of its workforce, and in July, Disney Entertainment Television let go of 140 workers. Back to Fast Company, they say, why are legacy media giants cutting jobs? While 2023 and 2024 made headlines for massive job cuts across the tech industry, many forget that media companies have been aggressively cutting jobs for the sake of cost reductions for almost as long. There are a few reasons for this, and both can be blamed on the shift to streaming. There's hardly an entertainment giant left that does not have its own streaming service. But most of these services are so far unprofitable, contributing to losses quarter after quarter. Meanwhile, the transition to streaming is also having an impact on legacy television, the former bread and butter for most of these companies. People today, especially younger generations, are abandoning legacy pay TV services in droves. Fewer audiences mean advertisers are less willing to spend as much on advertisements. This is leading to reduced ad income for many media giants. As a way to help stem the bleeding from unprofitable streaming and lower legacy TV ad revenue, many companies have implemented cost-cutting plans, which often means letting employees go. So I went to layoffs.fyi to filter out the companies that are headquartered in the US and September to just do a quick run through of what they had that we might not have covered. So we have Drata out of San Diego, and they laid off 40 people September 26th. We have Move out of Cedar Falls, and they laid off 50 in September 25th. F5 out of Seattle, undisclosed number of layoffs, September 24th. Freight Waves out of Chattanooga, laid off 16, September 24th. We have Olo out of New York City, undisclosed, September 23rd. Notable Labs out of San Francisco Bay Area, undisclosed, September 20th. Luminar out of Orlando, undisclosed, September 20th. Reverb out of Chicago, 40, September 20th. IBM, New York City, undisclosed, September 18th. Microsoft out of Seattle, 650, September 12th. Imperity out of Seattle, undisclosed, September 12th. Udemy, which we covered in a previous video, San Francisco Bay Area, 280 on September 11th. Nori out of Seattle, undisclosed, September 9th. Goop out of Los Angeles, 39, September 6th. Motif Foodworks out of Boston, undisclosed, September 6th. Lyft out of San Francisco Bay Area, 30, September 4th. ChargePoint out of San Francisco Bay Area, 250, September 4th. Fly.io out of Chicago, and that's 40. And that was back in September 4th. So I don't have the official tally of numbers like I said in the opening, but I just wanted to go over the high number of layoffs and all the organizations I could find that were doing mass layoffs and have done that or announced that they were going to do that in September. So I don't know if the numbers are down from where they were in August, but they're definitely not good. Talk to you later.